The Queen's Jewish Link presents the Jewish Living Podcast, the show that examines the many facets of Orthodox Jewish life. Here's your host, Izzo Zwirin.
It's Purim this week, joyous times to be had by all, especially as it comes at the very end of 2 years of a pandemic. And you know what? No fancy pants introductions needed for this one. We wanted to have a good time, so we brought back comedian Eli Lebowicz to shoot the breeze on the Jewish comedy scene. We hope you enjoy.
Yeah.
Eli Lebowicz, welcome back to the show. Very, very honored to have you as a repeat guest.
Thank you. Good to be here. Always fun to talk.
Well, we're recording right now for our Purim episode. What better way to get into Purim than with a little bit of comedy? I wanted to get your overall thoughts on Purim. My thinking for you is that like Purim is that time that everybody thinks they're a comedian. They do their spiels and they do a funny video and they have their themes for Purim. So what is a comedian's thought about the time of year that everybody thinks they're a comedian?
Well, I think it's okay. Like I'm all for people being more laid back and fun, especially Jews who are just like very serious. I think I wrote something recently how, during Adar, everybody's like okay to have fun, and the rabbi will wear a blue shirt and go crazy. And I think that's okay. I think when it's not Adar and you make a joke, people always try to like tell you, and it's like, it's inappropriate because it's Tu B'Shvat or they tie in some random Jewish calendar moment that's coming up. Again, a possible album title will be called During Elul, no less. So all the time people are try to. I think Jews and Orthodox Jews specifically are very, very serious all the time, and maybe I'm just talking about Lidfox, I don't know, but we were just very serious all the time, and I think it wouldn't hurt anybody if we had, like, again, I think it's on purpose to have a second Adar. I think there's a reason for that. So I don't mind that, and especially like in my years in yeshiva, when everyone was just like, hey, how great is everything, and like from a serious standpoint, and then Purim was nice because people were just like letting their hair down and being more calm. I think they should have more Purim.
So
8 days of Purim would be another comedy album.
That would be a very interesting.
But that makes me sound like an alcoholic. So
first of all, I've already told you your album needs to be entitled Glila Build. That has to be the title of your album.
No, it's going to be called Remind Me After Shabbos. But
fine.
that title tells you exactly where I'm at, and it comes from me going to my wife and being like, hey, I thought it was a great joke at our meal, or over Shabbos, remind me after, and then after Shabbos she'll say, I was supposed to remind you of something.
My thought around Purim was always that the same type of thing where like that's our one day to let loose. Like we're so uptight the entire year, so we have all of this energy bubbling up, and then that one day it goes crazy. If you go into yeshiva, that happens, and it doesn't really work the same way in reverse with Tisha B'Av. We have that one very sad day of year, but that doesn't prevent us from being very, very sad and downtrodden the rest of the year. I don't know why it doesn't work both ways.
Well, I feel like Purim is a little bit like the Jewish Rumspringa for I guess, but I don't know. I feel like it's something Jews tend to lean to be sad or guilt-ridden. There's guilt-ridden, there's, hey, like I saw something on Twitter a few months ago. I think the Women's March posted something about around Thanksgiving, and they said, we're so sorry that our donations were asking for donations of $14.92. We know how insensitive that is to Native Americans or something. And I was like, imagine if this organization did not realize how anti-Semitic they were and were apologizing for this stupid thing. But also imagine if every Jew was offended by every year because every year something bad has happened to us. Oh, I'm sorry, we can't do 1492, 1493. There was this pogrom, this thing. So yeah, I think there's a reason Jews are just like, oh man, the world is just really heavy. I mean, but that is also why we have a sense of humor, I think, because
I'm sorry that we're counting years from the time of the Christian God being born as opposed to from the creation of the world at this point. Like the year
Well,
is, if you ever wanted to know, I forget which comedian it was. I apologize,
Louis,
it's Louis C.K.
I
that
don't know.
he said, if you ever want to know which religion won, what year are we in? Is that Louis C.K.?
Yeah, because his name of the special is 2017, and
There
he's
you
like
go.
saying it's the year 2017. Christianity clearly won. He's like, Jews are like it's 5,000. He's like, shut up, whatever.
Exactly. Well,
Yeah.
since we've had you on, you have proven that you are not a flash in the pan. You didn't just die out, fizzle out after the 1 or 2 years of success. You've been able to parlay this into a fairly successful ongoing comedic career. So I want to know, what have you, so we had you on in 2019, and since
10 years
then,
ago, 10 years ago,
10 years ago in 2019,
in COVID years.
I want to know, okay, we'll get to COVID a little bit later, but as a comedian, what have you picked up in the last 3 years since we've had you on? Not COVID. Let's leave that. We're going to get that to there in a little bit.
But
you picked it up. I know. I picked it up twice.
Six more jokes. I came up with 6 more jokes over the last.
All right, talk to me. What has come up?
Well, I like your thinking. Like, you weren't just popular for a year and fizzled out. You were at least there for at least 2.5 years. So you've really, really lasted in the time. I don't know. I've been able to really come into my own a little bit more in terms of, I think Twitter has become more of a thing. There's like the quote unquote from Twitter verse, I would call it, where people are just making these jokes about things that I'm like, oh, only I'm going to understand this, right? And then little do you know that, like, oh, by the way, there's a bunch of people who are like on Twitter that are like, oh, I love these types of jokes. So I've kind of developed a little bit of that. Instagram became more of a thing. I'm not as much on TikTok as I should be, but I've been able to really, perform a bunch more for, still leaning hard on, probably Orthodox audiences, but really kind of expanding to, a little bit more broadly within the Jewish world. I did a number of shows over COVID I did probably 100 Zoom shows over COVID, and only 2 of them were terrible, which is a pretty good, a show is bad when you get kicked out of the Zoom. As I gotta say, but there's bombing as a comedian, and then there's bombing so hard that you get removed from the Zoom. And I don't know if you've ever tried to join a Zoom that you've been kicked out of, but it says you've been removed from the Zoom, which is just horrible for your self-confidence. But thank God that was the minority. And I did, again, I probably about 100 shows, and most of them I couldn't hear anybody, but I assume they went great.
So talk to me about that. Is it different not getting that immediate feedback? Usually performers, people who are used to doing their job in front of an audience, I'm assuming athletes had to do this when they had to go into like the bubble, and it's a little bit different. They still got the gratification of, let's say, the ball going into the hoop, but with your gratification comes from when you hear that feedback. When you're not doing that, when you don't have the laughter coming in front of you, like, how do you know if you're doing well? How do you know if people are enjoying themselves? I'm assuming everybody is on mute. Maybe you can see their face going like laughing, but they don't hear it. How is that different for you?
So thankfully, yeah, I was gonna say athletes always can tell, yeah, when you score a basket or whatever, it's like, okay, there's an objective thing there. I mean, hopefully I've done it at this point where comedy is like, okay, I've done it enough that I know if this joke doesn't get a laugh, then it's on you and not me. But I actually was able to, figure out that the best way to do it was to have about 5 or 6 people unmuted at the beginning, and then everybody else was muted. And that way it kind of was the best of both worlds, because I was able to hear 5. I would ask like in advance, which people are the good like Shabbos table, the people that are like good Shabbos table audiences. This is the closest thing I've had to a Shabbos meal in 3 years, by the way. So, so those types of, so you have 6 people unmuted or so, and then you have everyone else muted, and hopefully they have their cameras on. Some Jewish audiences would be like, no, we're not doing that.
But then have your camera off too.
I would have my camera off too. It would make it very difficult. But it was challenging. I mean, one of the main, jokes I say now that I'm doing live shows again is that I said that I'm not taking this for granted. The fact that I'm not staring at a bunch of old ladies' nostrils who don't know how to use a webcam is a pretty incredible thing. Because again, it was 2 years of just Howard, has the comedian started yet? You're not wearing pants. And so you would literally like, have again, there were sometimes also people wouldn't be, first of all, you would have designated laughers. So like, I say laughers, I mean there's 5-6 people who were unmuted who understood that like, hey, you have a good sense of humor, you're a laugher. And then sometimes those people wouldn't really laugh, and I would just be like, I would be able to call them out and be like, you guys are doing a great job. And but like there's a reason a comedy album has an audience, has a live audience.
There's a reason sitcoms have laugh tracks or live audiences.
Not even that, just right. You just need the feedback of like, you can tell something's funny, but it's just, there's something about the human psychology that I would say that like there are times it was challenging because if people were, sometimes people would be muted completely, everybody, and that was really hard. And you wouldn't see any response. Really, you wouldn't get any feedback. The only time you would get a response was someone emails you afterwards that they were upset. And I told my rabbi, he's like, now you know how I feel. So, it took some getting used to, but thank God I was able to do it because I was, performing all the time, especially March, April, May, when it was really, really needed for people. And from a cathartic standpoint, I think people were, everybody just like, well, I'm here with my kid for 3 months, going insane. Also, Pesach's at home, which is isn't a thing I was prepared for. Do you have any jokes for me? And I was just like, all right. And I was able to do it. And I also, one of the nice things was that everybody was going through that same experience, kind of. Everybody was going through the kind of the fear, the unknown, the rules, everything is scary. So to be able to really just like alleviate some of that tension, I think it was really, really helpful, especially for, some audiences, let's say like especially the beginning of like 2020, before, let's say pre-vaccine, the audiences were very, very, I would say older people often because they weren't really leaving. And I would make this joke. I would say like, I make a joke about the Art Scroll Monster on Yom Kippur. And I say, if you say, here's the beer and bomb, I really hope you've gotten the vaccine. And, stuff like that. But it was as hard as it was. I was really glad because it was really able to keep me fresh. And I didn't perform. I know there were comedians out there who are like, I haven't performed for 2 years, and I'd be like, how do you even, do that? So it got me writing consistently, got me performing consistently, and also, keeping up my parnassa a little bit.
Yeah, so you mentioned Twitter before. I want to go back to that a second. One of the big exciting things that happened on Twitter was this rise of the Vada Barchanim, which I know you're heavily part of. I don't know if that's supposed to be a secret who's part of that, but I happen to some people are out there. It's probably pretty obvious to see who's retweeting it. The people who retweet it right away kind of know.
I think it's like when Kevin Durant would like fight people on Twitter under a pseudonym, and then it
was back when Kevin Durant was the bad guy. Was the heel, if you will. I don't know if you're a wrestling fan. Sorry.
Okay.
So I wanted you to talk a little bit about the Vada Barchanim and their role in From Twitter, and specifically the From Tweet of the Year that everybody seems to look forward to, starting like in the middle of November for some reason.
Everyone looks forward to, all three of us. I don't
know. Wait. I want to tell you something. I don't know who started it, but somebody one of you guys opened up a thing like at the end of November, one of those live the Twitter live things where they said we're going to announce the brackets, and you had like 50 people tuning in, and it was just basically a loop of Ashrei Yoshvei Beisecha by the by Yeshiva Boys Choir.
So bored.
And I was wondering how many people were gonna, like, how long would people last on that thing, and so don't think that just 3 of you. There are people that are interested.
Well, that's the interesting thing about, I guess, because even before Twitter, you talk to people in their 20s, and they're like, I was like, oh, I used to make jokes on Facebook. You're like, Facebook? How old are you? I was like, do you see how little hair I have? But so you don't know. The truth is, you really don't know the impact of your online audience. Here's the Art Scroll version of the From. You don't know what kind of thing you can do. You one person, you can change whatever.
You need to work on your nusach for that.
Yeah, I got nothing. Yeah. But so the Vada Barchanim, it's me and I don't know, a group of guys. I think there used to be women a part of it. as well, just because somebody's going to write letters or then send faxes or carrier pigeons at this point. But where we'd just be like, hey, here are like, collaboration. I think we became more, popular over COVID, and everyone's just like, everyone's like, oh, I'm so sick of these jokes about the same things and like, because there's nothing worse. Back to, I guess, your original question about Adar and Purim is that it's a little bit tough because some people are like, there's such a low hanging fruit of jokes, and you're like, oh, you can go for this joke, and it's like, yeah, everyone's like, I'm sorry, but your Putin Purim joke, everyone is doing a Putin Purim joke, which I'm not, but I just feel like, what I mean? Like there's stuff that like, okay, like I heard a comedian say, he's like, as a comedian, it's like there's the first level of like what everyone thinks of, and then there's second level is what comedians think of, and then there's third level is trying to be as original as possible. So that's the thing, is sometimes I'm just like, I got to go for the original joke. So thought about Purim, it's like I didn't even know how to describe it. It's just like a bunch of different Jewish from jokes and from topics as like, I guess like a committee. I don't know. Even know. I guess that's what a VOD is.
That's right. It's a group of people that are trying to accomplish. A VOD is generally they're trying to accomplish some sort of kashrus or Torah goals, and you guys are trying to make fun of stuff.
Yeah, there is some. Again, I think there is, especially given the last couple of years it's been in the current state of the world right now. I don't think it's not the worst idea to have a little bit more levity in the world, because otherwise it's a little sad or scary. So I would say that's not a bad thing. But so the From Tweet of the Year is, it's like a March Madness type of bracket where people nominate, hey, these are the best, From tweets, and everybody can nominate stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's cool to see that there's like a bigger audience of these jokes. And I'm like, oh, wait, I'm not the only one who like played Kent on a Shabbos and who actually understood.
That was every bar mitzvah that I ever went to.
Well, yeah, I feel like you have that. Or like, what did you do during a long Shabbos?
Yeah,
when it was like cold, or I don't know,
really hot. You didn't want to stay outside the whole time.
Yeah, I don't know. People are like, oh, you played cards, you played president or whatever, and you played Kent.
Yeah, that was the tweet. I don't know if that was, so I don't know how you decided if it goes to the VOD about Chanukah or if it goes to your specific handle, but like I think that was your tweet with was it a Knesset meeting?
It was I think it was before I guess the coalition, it was like Yair Lapid and Benny Gantz or something, and Netanyahu and Shaked. I forgot who was talking. It was like a group of two people talking, two people in separate, like, standing apart from each other. Two people were talking to each other, and next to them was another two people talking to each other, like, in their own.
The caption was something along the lines of, all right,
what do we do? What's the code when one of us has Kent?
That's right.
It's a more visual joke, so it's not
very
podcast.
Exactly. I was shocked, by the way, for this year, because I thought the video of the straight out of Baba Kama was going to run away with that. That was one of the greatest tweets I've ever seen, like in any context. But the cow goring the shore goring the guy on the motorcycle was one of, and the caption was straight out of Baba Kama. And if you haven't seen that tweet, man, it is so perfectly named. I think it was from Israel also. It wasn't.
I think it's like some random.
I thought I saw Hebrew signs in the back. That's why I thought so.
I don't know. There's a lot.
But I'm shocked.
I think we kind of like we just assume the thing with Hebrew lettering is kosher. We just assume that random lettering is Hebrew. No, but there was also the one with the water slide. Like, no, it's like
I know.
Is that the winner?
Yeah, I think that one won.
The water slide.
I think it beat out the
water park, and the lifeguard said, "Oh, what are all these kids doing? They're saying this bracha after the water slide." And there's like, "Oh, we got to teach him Asher Yatzar." Yeah. I was like, "Oh, that's pretty good." Yeah, no, I think it's cool to see that. Like, I think what's nice about this whole From Twitter thing is that people have started, there just seems to be like almost like an open forum of different jokes about different topics of that. You take a caption. I mean, I think Dov Bashefkin was probably the first person who I started like noticing doing this, of like, taking a caption and kind of taking a picture and then repurposing it with like a from thing. That's and those are always like fun to do if you can come up with an original take. Like I had one with who's the guy in Dallas on the Mavericks, Luke.
Luka Doncic.
Yeah, there you go. So yeah, I can't. Yeah, so there was a thing of like Dirk Nowitzki going like putting his hands down. And I'm like, yummy, my mouth. So stuff like that. Again,
Yeah.
visual. You guys won't know what the heck I'm talking about, but
yeah. I want to go back to COVID because I can't let it go.
Neither can anyone else.
Yeah. I like everybody else.
Neither can half of the United States.
I'm very much looking forward to a day when we could say, remember COVID?
That was crazy, guys.
Yeah. My kids don't remember a before COVID.
That's so sad.
It's crazy. I'm sure your kids are the same way.
My 1.5-year-old was putting a mask on a Mickey Mouse doll. And I said, this is the cutest / saddest picture I've ever seen.
Exactly. But what have you been able to pull things out of COVID that are COVID specific that you related to Judaism in any way?
Relating them to Judaism. Yeah. I mean, when I was doing Zoom shows, I had a whole bit about, I said, I would come up with stuff, tying it into Judaism a little bit and say like, 40 is a really important number in Judaism. Moshe was in Har Sinai for 40 days. The Jews were in the desert for 40 years. A free Zoom session shuts off after 40 minutes. So it's a really important number. That joke does not work live. And also, I don't know, I think also just like, again, the idea of teachers being able to like adapt to COVID and being able to do Zoom school when like, I don't know, I think of Jewish school and my Jewish school upbringing. I said, it's impressive that the teachers were able to figure out Zoom because the teachers I had growing up couldn't even figure out the video cart with the TV on it. So
I lost a job because of COVID. I lost a teaching job.
I lost many jobs because of COVID.
No. I lost it before. I lost jobs due to COVID before everybody was losing jobs due to COVID. This was ridiculous. I went to go back to my grad school, and this was February of 2020. I went back to my grad school and I said, "Hey, do you guys need a professor, like an adjunct to teach some like any?" And I was looking for like a little extra income, and they said, "Actually, here's what we need. If you can help do this, all of our teachers are much older, and our students that are coming in are looking for more online options. But our teachers aren't able to like handle to grasp the online schooling and figure out how to teach things online. And they don't really, is that something you could do?" I'm like, "Sure." So this was February of 2020. And they gave me the textbook, and I have it sitting on my shelf right there. And they said, "Come up with a syllabus and get back to us." So for like 3 weeks, I'm sitting there putting together a syllabus, trying to contemplate. COVID happens, and I said, "All right, here's my syllabus. Like, we don't need you anymore because all the teachers now are forced to do online. So now everybody learned how to do it."
And the school shut down. No,
it was crazy. Like they didn't all of a sudden didn't need me anymore. It was done. So it was like right away.
Well, I remember in February, let's say March 13th of 2020, I would say was when that was like that was the Shabbos that after Purim that a lot of these shuls like shut down. And I said, how weird was that when your shul emails you not to come?
Yeah,
like that's a weird role reversal. Yeah. But literally like the weirdest thing was like in February like 14th, I was in St. Louis doing a show. Then I went on vacation to LA with my family. I did some shows in LA on the next Shabbos. The next week I was in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Then I went to Stamford, Connecticut. Then I did a couple shows in Baltimore around Purim, and then back in Washington Heights. And then COVID happened or whatever, everything closed down. I was worried that I was spreading it everywhere. I kind of say this in jest, but I'm just saying like I was really worried that, and then I ended up getting COVID like 2 weeks after that, incidentally. But so I didn't spread it, but but yeah, I was like, oh man, I have been in every city in the United States right now, and it would have been bad.
All right, I'm going to ask you a question. I don't. The last time you were on, I don't think I asked you this, but you mentioned earlier about how you kind of self-censor, and there's certain areas that are off limits to you. But are there jokes that you thought of, like, and you'd think, this would kill somewhere, I just don't know where I could say it?
You mean in terms of like if I think it's like too dirty or whatever?
Too dirty, making fun of the wrong thing, maybe like something that you don't touch.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are personal things that I think are I'm like, okay, I think it's off limits, and I don't think it's so. Again, I don't think making jokes about this Russia Ukraine thing, unless it's like, I guess, making fun of Putin in a lambasting him kind of way type of thing, but like
But also
uh,
has to be less obvious.
less obvious, but also like not tasteless, that like, hey, there's an active war going on and stuff like that. I think it's a little tough to do. I think there are times when I'm like, I think this is funny, but like, I don't know if this is gonna, be appropriate. Like, I don't know if it'll be cut, but I can mention my joke about how during COVID, I said how COVID was a little similar to like, Taras Mishpacha, the just the restrictions of like, with COVID, it's like, all right, today's all right, you gotta get tested, and all right, 5 days, no, 7 days later, you gotta get tested again. Like, wait, why? And like the rabbi's trying to be like, listen, I'm trying to be as lenient as possible, and you're like, what? And then if you take a PCR test, it's just like a pregnancy test. You're like, all right, what does this mean, and who do I have to tell? Um, so, but again, I started telling that joke, but I told you that was the one that when I really started that beginning of that joke, I was beginnings of thinking of that joke, I was like, is this too far? Because I'm sure, I mean, I think I told that joke and some people were like, well, it was good until he got into the, because that's how rabbi.
When you present that joke, you have a disclaimer like at the end of it, like, all right, we got through the show so far. Let's try this one.
It also follows with a joke about it follows a joke about Sota. So I'm like, all right, guys, if that was okay with you, we're okay, right? Like, is the roof still here? Are we okay?
Are we still cool?
Yeah, and also like I think it's also very different. Like, I think the way I'm telling some of these jokes is just, my perspective is so different. Like, I just feel like so many classic comedians are like, religion is stupid, Judaism is stupid or whatever. And the fact that I'm like, I would say an active participant in Judaism, it sounds like a really weird way, but the fact that I'm like a, observant person who davens, keeps Shabbos, keeps kosher, and like, I'm very proud of my Judaism most of the time. Is the fact that I'm doing that from that perspective should hopefully like be able to like, hey, I can make a joke about this, guys, right? I'm not like pandering to you. I'm not like these like, quote unquote, you get somebody who's like a Jewish comedian who is just like, hey, bagel, cheap, and you're like, ugh, this is terrible. But again, people have their own sensitivities. Everybody's like, okay, no, you can't make a joke about Kiddush Levana. Like, that is very serious. Like, and at a certain point, I'm just like, I don't know. I hope God has a sense of humor. I really do. Because but I think we really need it. Again, if I do believe that everybody has a certain, role in their lives of what their abilities are, and seems to be, thank God, that I was given a predisposition to enjoy The Simpsons and Seinfeld, which helped form my sense of humor, and whatever, and have that be one of my. I don't have other skills, so maybe may if you take this,
just so I'm clear, the guy who has an actual other job aside from being a comedian just said that he doesn't have any.
But like, okay, I can write, and I can edit, and I have a brain, isn't a skill. I'm just saying that, this is this and vending at Cubs games at Wrigley Field for years are the only two things that I've really done long enough that I'm like, oh, I've really seen my own progress and growth. And so, but I'll limit myself. I'll sometimes project based on the audience's reaction. That's why Zoom stuff was hard, because I'll project, I'll be like, oh, you guys were offended because you were frum, and this was too frum, you were too frum for this, or this wasn't frum enough. And they're like, no, we just couldn't hear you. So sometimes that's tough. But
I was at one of your shows where you mentioned like different things about Sephardim, and I was looking around, and I happen to know some people at the show. And I'm like looking at the Sephardim cracking up, and some of the Ashkenazim, not sure if they're allowed to laugh or not.
Getting offended on behalf of the Sephardim.
It's exactly right.
Is the most it's like I'll make jokes about Chabad too, which are, you know, pretty pro Chabad, and you know, and people, like I'll, you know, one of the jokes that has gone well, you know, with the COVID connection, I said that the beginning of March of 2020, beginning of COVID, everybody really became Chabad in a way, at least at the very beginning, in the sense that we really lost our sense of timing. We were drinking more, we weren't shaving. Everywhere we went was kind of terrifying, but kind of exciting. And every day I had to ask myself, did I put on tefillin today? So, but again, when I say that premise of like every, you know, Chabad, or I'm making jokes about Chabad, like Chabad people can handle it. They're the most, you know, I would say, you know, laid back, you know, I guess sect of Judaism. I would say sect of Orthodoxy, or sect of,
Oh, if you don't count Breslov, but yeah.
yeah, in a different way. But I'm just saying, Chabad guys have seen it all, and they're like, they have to deal with everybody off the street. Like their opener is, "Are you Jewish?" That's their whole thing. And if you say yes, they're like, oh shoot, I know, and that, like, now what do I do in terms of, so they can connect with everybody, and it's just everyone's their own neuroses to be like, oh man. Like I also started saying, like, Chabad is really like, people treat Chabad the way they treat their parents. Like they'll make jokes about them, they'll be like, they'll like complain about them and stuff like that. But then when they're in the middle of nowhere and they're desperate and they're like, I need food, do you know anyone Jewish? I'm trapped in this place and I don't know anyone. It's a work in progress, that joke. But yeah.
I asked you that question to lead into a question about somebody who became really popular, especially on TikTok, and that's Miriam Anzovin. I think that's how you pronounce it. She's the one who does a lot of videos about Daf Yomi. She does a Daf review every day.
Yeah.
She's come under pressure or fire, but a lot of people seem to love her. She amassed a tremendous following on various forms of social media. I wonder what you would think about her gimmick.
I mean, I think, listen, is she doing Daf Yomi? I'm not doing Daf Yomi, so one up on me. Is she teaching people Torah that probably wouldn't be learning Torah? Great. You know, I'm saying, if I post a joke about the Parsha or something like that, and somebody who isn't super observant likes that joke, and I'm like, hey, I made them think about Judaism and the Parsha for a second. Great. If like, again, the same thing I said, if you have a way, she clearly has an entertaining way to teach and to make videos and to do it, and like, yeah, she is like making jokes, which I don't think that's against what I stand for, but like she's bringing I guess the Gemara and to a very relatable level to an audience. I mean, I think Judaism is a very, very scary Judaism, you know, traditional Judaism is so very worried about like, what do we do? It's going to turn slippery slope, and this is how you get to this, this point. I think there is a certain level of adaptability. Like, look at Torah Shabbal Peh, had to be written down at some point. So I think if the worst thing that you have is a woman, God forbid, yeah, I'm kidding, but teaching Torah over TikTok and like telling people what Daf Yomi is, and okay, yes, sometimes she curses and stuff like that. Whether or not that's not my personal style of my own humor.
Because as you say, nobody would believe you anyway.
Nobody would, man, if I cursed, it would just feel very inauthentic. But like, she's getting an audience to be involved, and it's like, again, how many people were probably upset when like Schonstein was like, I'm going to translate the Gemara into English
anytime we do something new. Yeah,
right. Everyone's just like, oh man, the Septuagint, they're like, we got to enact a fast day, like, yeah, something new. I think there's a certain level of like, I was like getting with the times in some ways. I think the when rabbis would get all upset, like the asifas and these things that are against like smartphones, and I was like, my issue is that you already lost the battle. It's like, people have smartphones. I said, get ahead of something before it's popular. Get ahead, again, 3D printing or virtual reality, okay, before it becomes a thing. But like, I don't know, she's entertaining, and like people seem to enjoy what she's doing, and like, I don't think she's being particularly like disrespectful, and like, people are like, okay, you can't curse in that regard. But I also don't know if half the flack she's getting is because she's a woman doing it.
Right. I'll tell you the truth. So a couple of things. When I do that Yomi, I try to like predict which parts of the daf, because she doesn't go through the whole daf. She has a 2-minute video.
Right.
So I try to predict. All right.
If Dafyomi was 2.5 minutes, I would do it.
That's right. But I try to predict which sections, which parts of the daf she's going to be doing, to the point where if she posted a video, I couldn't watch that video if I was behind in the daf. Like if I'm 3 blocks behind and she posts a video today, I'm like, I can't watch that video until I finish that daf, and then I have to go find it again. But that's what it was. And I found it kind of ruining my learning to an extent, because I was paying more attention to what she was going to do than I was to what I was supposed to be learning.
I'm pretty sure the amount of people that are sitting in Shul on Yom Kippur and thinking of my Lots New joke. Most of the time.
Guilty.
Or any Yalaviavo, anytime somebody bangs Yalaviavo. And I'm like, I don't know. But again, people would say, oh, you can't make a joke about being, taking Judaism less seriously. And I'm thinking to myself, if my hope one day is that I take it more seriously, and I'm still sorry about it, I'm not doing it on purpose, but I'm just saying human nature. A couple things about that, though. It's like when I would, sometimes read the Parsha, and I'm like, oh, let me make a joke about it, and just from more like an anachronism, like a Mel Brooksian type of thing, to try to connect it to modern day. Which again, some people will be like, oh, you can't make a joke about that because it's the Torah. But I do think there's a certain level of like, almost like we need like, like The Voice, the show where you don't see the person singing until they turn around. So almost like you need like a vacuum of like, hey, here is this thing. Are you okay if X person does this? X person does this? Is it a man? Is it a woman? Do you care? And then it's like, let's be honest. Are you? Same thing with politics. I think politics is crazy. I hate that anti-Semitism has become this like on the left, it's like, oh, classic right-wing nationalists and their anti-Semitic rhetoric. And then they don't care that I think Ilan Omar's, who are like very, very maybe possibly ish anti-Semitic. And like, but like everyone's biased to their own side. So again, take this thing. It's like, okay, if a man was doing this, would you be upset by it?
Right.
And that's I think that might be part of it. I don't know, but
there's another part that she's not. I don't think she's from. That was the other thing. Is that why you're upset about it?
For me, I'm not upset.
No, not you. Not you.
People. What you're saying in terms of like Shomer Shabbos or whatever? Yeah. I mean, I don't know, but like again, if it's somebody who's learning Daf Yomi, I'm like, I don't know, Peter Beinart, who is like very anti-Israel, he's doing Daf Yomi. I was like, I have a bigger problem with that. And then that was
the weirdest thing that I found.
Oh, the best one, he said it. He's at Tips for Learning Daf Yomi, and Rejected Feldheim Titles, which is all a very good Twitter account, posted Peter Beinart, who's this very, very anti-Zionist guy, posted saying like Tips for Learning Yevamos, and then Rejected Feldheim Titles wrote learn the first Rashi and Bereshis, which is very, for those of you that don't, is basically like talking about how the Torah started with Bereshis to show you that God decided to give the land to the Jewish people, and there will be a time when people decide that the Jewish claim isn't valid to the land.
I don't know why Tips for Learning Daf Yomi by Peter Beinart wasn't a Rejected Feldheim title.
That it might be a good one. That's a good one. That's a very good account to follow.
If you don't follow.
But again, with humor, also in general, you're going to offend someone. Mike Birbiglia, one of my, I guess, inspirations, has a special called "Thank God for Jokes," and he's like, jokes have to be about something. And again, I mean this, that I think like, people that get offended by certain topics, again, I don't think it's a certain taste, it's tastefully or it's a too soon element, but like, you can't make a joke about, let's say, Russia and Ukraine and then get offended when somebody makes a joke about Israel and Palestinians. Like, right. I understand that's where your sensitivity is, but you have to be understand that people are sensitive in a way. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, but the fact that like, okay, so she's not quote unquote observant, like, I don't know, does that mean she can't teach? I mean, is it like, what's she doing it for? I don't know. Do we like, I guess like check everyone and say, what are you doing this for? How, I'm rewatching The Good Place. So it's like, what do you what are you doing it for? I don't know.
Yeah. I want to ask you this, and it's based on an article that I wrote this week. The weirdest tradition in Judaism. I'll tell you what mine was. I literally wrote this, that the weirdest thing, that not like halacha, but like the weirdest thing we do in Judaism is refer to a person based on the book that he wrote, like the Chavetz Chaim. Yeah, and we call him the Chavetz Chaim, and yet he also wrote the Mishnah Brura, which is like the way that we live our lives every day. Yeah, maybe you could say the Chavetz Chaim is like
it's like calling Steven Spielberg the AI. Like
yeah, exactly. So, but like, who wrote the Mishnah Brura? The Chavetz Chaim. No, the Chavetz Chaim didn't write the Mishnah Brura. Like, that's not his name. It would be like calling
so you mean Jewish vernacular minhagim?
Yeah, some weird things. Like, it would be like calling like Thomas Jefferson the Declaration of Independence. Like, that's who he is. He's the Declaration of Independence.
Right. People are like, well, it's like calling J.K. Rowling the Harry Potter, but
well, I want a differentiate. It has to be nonfiction.
Nonfiction.
Because we don't write, these are all like nonfiction, all halacha books,
right?
Things like that. It would be like calling Dale Carnegie How to Win Friends and Influence People. Maybe it's because the title's too long.
That was how he introduced himself.
Hi, I'm the How to Win.
Hi, I'm going to learn everything about you, and this is going to seem great, but it's really just salesy.
So, what do you think? What's your weirdest tradition?
What's my weirdest?
Because you like study this stuff. This is like your job to find the weird things that we do and then nitpick on them.
Yeah,
I put you on the spot like this, but I'm doing it.
Well, yeah, I wish you would have prepped me for this one. Chicken over the head is interesting. But what's something that we do as Jews? Right. I mean, Elon Gold has a whole bit about non-Jews. Calling people non-Jews is absurd when it's like, you're such a small minority, and you're the like, non-Jews.
That's like the Mitch Hedberg corn on the cob situation.
Right. You have to say the joke.
Oh, so you call.
I like how you think people are just like, oh, like when a rabbi does like, oh, the medrash, like, do you know Rabbi Leibtag in Israel? Menachem Leibtag.
Yes.
He's like a Tanakh master and whatever. And the best thing that he does is when you go to a shir of his, he'll kind of quote parts of Tanakh and just be like, it's Zechariah Perek Daled, and everyone's like, there's a Zechariah now.
So the Mitch Hedberg corn on the
you gotta.
The Mitch Hedberg corn on the cob is like, it's weird. We call corn on the cob, and corn in the can is corn. Like that'd be like if you take my arm off and you call it Mitch, and then you put it back onto me and you call it Mitch altogether. Like that's not how corn comes.
And then he's like, that's what I'm gonna name my CD.
And that's what I name on my special.
That's what it's gonna name his special. One of the things that we do. Well, I mean, people ask when it's like, do you perform for non-Jews? And I was like, yeah, but I also have like a tough time relating to non-Jews because, Judaism is such a like consistent part of my life that it's just like, I'm like, do non-Jews even own a crock pot? Why would that happen? Like, do you play board games? I don't know. Like even the Jewish vacation versus an Orthodox vacation versus a non-Jewish vacation, I would say. It's like non-Jews like go to like, oh, let's go to Spain, let's go to this place and just like eat all the food there. And vacation for Jews is just eating tuna somewhere else. It's like, oh, I've never eaten deli in the Grand Canyon before. Wow. So something that we do that's weird. I mean, do you have other examples that you have in your article? You had the book one.
I mean, I spoke about like kaparos, which is weird, which you spoke about, and tashlich. Basically, the entire month of Tishrei is weird. Hoshanas is one of those things when you whip Hoshanas on the ground. So everybody talks about the whipping Hoshanas. My thing is the throwing the lulav on top of the aron and then it sits there until Pesach. That's not the lulav. You throw the Hoshanas on top of the aron. I don't know if your shul does that. That was super weird. Like,
I mean, it's not that much weirder than buying a willow branch a minute ago for $5 just to whip it on the ground and make the janitor hate you. But so that's the part where you were like, really, you're like, oh, that's the thing that's really gonna be fun.
I don't know, the having a kiddush after davening and then going home to eat lunch. That's
just
Gluttony.
background of Judaism, of just hearing stories for years of like they had to ration potato skins and like what our ancestors went through, and just like all these stories. So like, yeah, when you're elbowing that lady out of the way for that last mini hot dog, you're thinking to yourself, this might be my last meal for a while. So that's just survival of the fittest type of thing. It's ironic that there's such a Jewish thing with Darwinism and evolution, because I feel like the whole Jewish attitude is survival of the fittest. Not the fittest, but like survival in a way. Like Judaism is very much almost the evolutionary idea of that. But that's gonna get me canceled. I'm just
It's been nice knowing you, Eli. I hope you enjoyed your time being able
it's
to.
It's like that's the thing that gets you canceled. It's like, yeah, it's like when you, I don't know, it's kind of like when you have like the level of like Averos, and it's like you're not supposed to talk, during Chazar Shas, and it's like you got up there and it's like, you talk during Chazar Shas. I was like, that's it. Like I was like, that's what I got. It's so one of the things I say is that Judaism's like chinuch system, or at least growing up, that sometimes it's like so fire and brimstone-y that it's like, this is the worst thing you could ever do. And it's like, I just imagine, I said, this is, what's the line? Yeah, there's a probably people standing in a line in Gehenna, like, and they're like, hey, what are you in for? Oh, I murdered 6 people. What about you? I took my tzitzis off while playing at basketball camp. Really? That's equal? Yeah, it's a really weird scale. And so we don't know. I think what's the weirdest thing in Judaism that we do? I don't know. I think it is very funny that in a lot of Orthodox circles that there is this separation of men and women, and then like I say this with like masks, so like mask guidelines, like, oh, wear a mask, don't wear a mask, don't wear a mask. And like, come on, I can't adapt this quickly. It's like my really frum yeshiva day school growing up was like, don't talk to girls. And one day they're like, why aren't you married? You're like, they're like, what? You're like, yeah, we meant to talk to them eventually, but like they never tell you when you're supposed to do that. You got all these like girls who graduate from like high school or like seminary, and they're like engaged a minute later, and they're like, somehow they never talk to a boy, and you're like, so that's
when
definitely,
did you find the time?
Yeah, that's definitely something that we do is in practice. I think we eat a lot, but that's just because we're like, everything else is usser. That's part of it. This was a joke that I think I said Jews are so obsessed with food that the first thing we make when panic happens, they make a huge statue of a cow. But again, like, I'm sure there are people that are like, very serious thing. I was like, I know, and I've lived with it. That's I bet half of Judaism's guilt for generations is, your ancestors did the Egel HaZahav. I was like, I'm from Sheva Levi. I don't think they did. Okay.
That's right. Sheva Levi. We need like a hand signal.
I think they have one, but we're not supposed to do it.
Oh.
They're like, oh yeah, it's a going. No, it's being a Levi on Simple Star is like having TSA pre-check. Your question, I don't have this is the weirdest thing we do. Shlis Challah, certainly very strange.
That is a weird one.
I think I get annoyed when people get too into skulas, when they're like, you better say this, it's the whole thing of like, you better say Parshas Aman on this Tuesday of Parshas B'Shalach, and they're like, you're supposed to be working on the hour, like you're taking away from, that's why I think I said after that, I said everybody's in-laws is sending them Parshas Yisro during that one. But yeah, right. I don't have a one thing. I think
if you listen to your routine, it's like all of the things that you make fun of are the weird stuff.
Yeah, but I'm also doing it being like, guys, this is weird that we do that, right? Like, maybe don't name the code to every shul 613.
Oh, but they try to trick you when they have the 2 and the 4 together. Like, there's no 613 here.
You were the one that told me that. I was like, what? That's why it's 2-4?
Did you not know that before I told you? That's amazing. It's 2 and 4 together, 1 3. That's like every shul.
Honestly, the best impromptu joke that I thought it was when I was in St. Louis for Shabbos of the Young Israel St. Louis, one of the best shows I've ever done, and it was one of the best letters of recommendation, because I need these like hechshers from shuls, because otherwise people had, comedian, I don't know, we had a musician once and no more music anymore. So so when I was at that shul, there's one of those shuls where they don't just have like letters of like Aleph, Gimel, Dalet, Hey as the code. They give you like trivia, and you're supposed to, and that's gonna, so now you're standing outside and it says like Avos, Luchos. You're like, shoot, how many Avos were there? And it's really, and that was the one, the LOK2 was one of them on there. And I just love the idea of like some Catholic guy being like, I'm trying to get in, I'm trying to press the key, nothing's working. Yeah, that was a fun one. Oh, but well, on that same night, they have a pizza place in St. Louis, and the person told me, they said, oh, the show is going to start late because the pizza's not here yet, whatever. And the way she said it to me is like, I imagine if I told this to somebody who wasn't Jewish, it would be like, the show's not starting yet because the rabbi who makes the pizza holds Rabbeinu Tam. That right there, I think that was a good thread. Somebody started of like, what's a line? I think Jack Wenger from Meaningful People did a thing of what's a line that you say what's a line that's perfectly normal to Jews out of context, but totally makes sense and doesn't make any sense to non-Jews. So, and then somebody, obviously, because that's what WhatsApp does, is somebody took that list of all people's responses, took off their names, and just condensed it and made it into, hey, look at the original content I did. And I'm like, you're not bringing Mashiach, right? So the one I said was the day starts at night, which is a good out of context. Like, what the heck does that mean? You know what that means, or I didn't wash yet.
That was a great thread. I submitted one to that like way too late, like after it died down. I don't remember what it was. But yeah, you're right. That if you go back, I'm gonna see if I can find that thread and find what I added to that, because I remember that being like, just every time somebody put in a new thing, it was like, oh, that's phenomenal. That is,
yeah, some of them were good, and then again, this is where there's a little bit of an oversaturation, like where people are just like, oh man, it's now almost time for Shacharis, and you're like, that's not good.
Yeah. That's exactly. All right, we're almost out of time, but I want to give you a chance. Where can people find you? How can people book you? Is there anywhere that you're going to be performing that people could just like show up instead of having to book through their shul?
Thankfully not. I'm performing at a lot of private events, so it's like, can I come? I was like, I don't know. Well, when is this? When are you planning on releasing this?
Well, we are recording this on Thursday night, the 10th. Purim is next week. We're going to be releasing this before Purim.
Before Purim, okay.
Yeah.
So on Purim night at Stand Up New York on the Upper West Side, I'll be performing there. For I think
is there going to be a Megillah reading and then a break fast and then?
No, this is Thursday night the 17th.
So you just said the day starts at night, and
Fair.
then.
So Purim night, I don't know. It's 7:00, but the clock is changing on Sunday, and everybody with kids is gonna be like, oh God. I hate, by the way, the news is like, oh, I hope you enjoy. Like last time, they're like, I hope you enjoy that last extra hour of sleep. You're like, I hate you. I'm doing that at Stand Up New York on March 17th. I am doing something on March 13th, but you're probably not going to release it by then. On Sunday at the White Shul, this organization called Aim Higher, which is not a dating site. I thought it was, but it's for getting people jobs. But if it was a dating thing, it would be called Aim Lower. That was a joke that somebody gave to me. I was like, I got a rabbi actually gave that to me. And what else? You can find me in general. I do a lot of private events, but I also do some public ones. My website is elicomedy.com because Lebowicz is way too hard to spell. So elicomedy.com. You can book me there. I'm on Twitter at Eli Lebowicz, spelled extremely difficultly, at Lebowicz. I'm on Facebook if you're 1,000 like me. And I'm on Instagram. I think Eli Comedyagram, Leapstagram. I don't even remember that's pretty terrible.
Whatever. We'll link to all these places on our social media. We'll find it.
But you can Google. People. I don't know how many people listen to this. 6. Okay. Well, it's going to be 4 after. But yeah, this was fun. Always good talking to you. You're a good audience. I gotta run more jokes by you ahead of time.
Yeah, and I probably should give you more of a heads up as to what I'm going to ask you.
I mean, it's okay. I can more
I'll
just.
put you on the spot.
I don't mind. As a comedian, I should be like, hey,
One of the things I was going to ask you is like about how you have like these snappy comebacks and you were expected to, and I didn't ask you that, and I'm glad I didn't because I required you to give me a snappy comeback.
Well, I don't. One of the biggest challenges that I suffer from is doing crowd work, and I got very lucky the first time I ever performed on stage, or the second time. Sorry, the first time was at YU at a fundraiser. The second time was at Stand Up New York, where I'm going to be performing next week. But Stand Up New York, in I don't know, 13 years ago, 2009, I think. I got up on stage. It was like a fundraiser for Stay Wrote, and I thought it was going to be like all Jewish audience. It wasn't. It was like a mixed crowd of Jews and people that aren't Jews. And I was the last person to go, and I got up there and I said, "Oh my God, I'm sure you're sick of us." Another Jewish comedian, I'm sure you're so sick of us. And I asked this woman in the front row. This woman the whole night she wasn't smiling, and I called this woman in the front row. I was like, "Hey, so where are you from?" She says, "Germany." And I was like, okay then. And I got 10 seconds of laughter after that, which was great because if she said Iowa, I don't have a response. But she said the best thing if she would have said Ramallah or Germany, and my reaction was just so genuinely surprised. And now that she's, now I would have been like, "Oh, you're from Germany." I was like, "Oh, this makes sense that you didn't laugh." Like that would have been, how I would have said it now. But yeah, crowd work is something that I always want to work on. So yeah, by all means, always throw stuff my way, and always have the fun to have a nice audio Shabbos meal with you.
All right, Eli Lebowicz, thank you so much for joining me, and good luck.
Thank you very much, Izzo. Have a good one. Happy Purim.
Happy Purim, everybody. My thanks to Eli Lebowicz for joining me this week. If you're interested in continuing the laughter, check out Eli's first appearance on the show, Episode 8, Kosher Comedy Part 1, or Episode 9, Kosher Comedy Part 2 with Talia Reese. We wish all of you a Freilich Purim, and until next time, Kol Tov.
The Jewish Living Podcast is produced by Sreli Paikus. Our theme song is The Band by A.B. Rottenberg. Follow us on Facebook at The Jewish Living Podcast, and on Twitter and Instagram at Jewish_living. You can also email the show at jewishlivingpodcast@gmail.com. The Jewish Living Podcast is recorded in conjunction with the Queen's Jewish Link.
Hit record. The last time I was with you, we did it live in front of each other. I was in your apartment. It's the same apartment, isn't it?
I think it might be. Did I let you in that time?
Are you in Riverdale?
I'm in Riverdale.
Riverdale. All right. Yeah, same apartment. It doesn't look the same because I think you're in. Is that your wife? I can see in the background.
No, it's a shaitel head.
Ah.
Yeah.
It's really, you're gonna have fun with figuring out which ones of these you're gonna put at the end of the episode.
The jokes are very real. People ask me like, "Are you really married?" I said, "Yeah." Like at the end of a show, people are like, "Are you really married?" I was like, "You think I could talk to you about the horrors of a shaitel head?"
All right, let's do this. Let's introduce yourself. Hi, I'm so and so, and I'm so and so.
Was this an AA meeting?
It is. Surprise.
I'm Eli Lebowitz.
Do it again. I was talking over you.
All right. Hi, I'm Eli Lebowitz. I also interrupt people. Hi, I'm Eli Lebowitz, and I am a comedian that performs at Jewish events. I have to add that because I literally, when I perform at like, let's say comedy clubs like Stand Up New York, I perform at a bunch in the city, and New York City, I should say. I guess I shouldn't just assume everyone lives in New York and New Jersey. But when I perform on the Upper West Side of New York at like clubs, there are comedians who have like, I would say, real credits who are like, this guy Joe DeVito has been on Late Night with Stephen Colbert and Conan and whatever, and I go up and it's like, and Eli Lebowitz, you've seen him at the Young Israel West Hempstead. I gotta emphasize that I'm
all right.